Hello and welcome to Sex in the News. We are the Siegel Brothers. Our stories for you tonight, we're going to start with a woman with HIV had the coronavirus for 216 days and it mutated 30 times inside of her. Then we're going to talk about a man in Tennessee who was arrested after agents find a collection of childlike sex dolls. And our final story, a judge throws out the suspension of a teacher who said he would not use trans students' pronouns.
Okay, well, welcome back.
Welcome back to you, my brother.
Good to be with you for this week's news.
Same here.
This is a mind-blowing story. I still am not quite sure how to wrap my head around this. But a woman living with HIV was found just by random chance that she was taking part in a study and was found to have been carrying the coronavirus, COVID-19, for 7 months. Very mild symptoms, but scientists detected 32 mutations, including some seen in variants of concern, like we've been hearing about this variant D from India.
Right.
And the case, according to the researchers, suggests that HIV may contribute to this variant evolution, to COVID viruses mutating to more contagious or tougher to contain.
Yeah, and what they're finding, and again, right now they're just isolated cases. It's just a relatively small handful. But again, I mean, we're just kind of seeing this. But there was another study that was put out a couple of months ago, and it's suggesting now, when we look at all this data, that people with some kind of immune compromise.
Like HIV patients?
Right. Like the general thinking is that if you have a compromised immune system, you are more susceptible, you are likely to get sicker. But it seems like for a lot of these people, when it comes to COVID, immune compromise kind of, for lack of a better way to say it, kind of helps create a safe haven for the virus.
A lot of antibodies, right?
Well, there's that, but these are also long-term infections. People that have immune compromises seem to have lower level infections, but for a much longer time. Right? Now, again, they talk about all the different proteins and the antibodies, and I think for me the takeaway in all of this is, yeah, we're getting people vaccinated, which is a great thing. People need to do that. Again, like I just put on a T-shirt. Public health is not a personal choice, so this is something that everybody really does need to do. But this also puts an interesting wrinkle in that. If in some of these individuals there are these multiple mutations, right? And in this particular case, they don't know. They don't think, but they don't really know if she's passed it on. And if you have somebody that has these mutations in them, and you just get 32 mutations, that's mind-boggling.
Yeah.
Again, if that gets passed on, is there really any way to stop it? And for me, the biggest concern is that this woman is in South Africa, which already has probably the highest rate of HIV. So if there are people that are carrying mutations of this virus, and they're spreading it around, is that going to create another wave of COVID infections? And if it does, what's that going to look like with all of these different variants?
Well, if what's happening now in India is any indication, the answer is probably an unavoidable yes. That Africa stands to be similarly decimated.
Yeah, it sure might.
Yeah.
So again, we'll wait and see. This is a pretty
on
bizarre and a bit disconcerting of a development. But again, it just shows you why we still have to take COVID very seriously, because there are still things that we're finding out that we never knew before. Right? So again, especially for those people who finally came around to getting vaccinated, that doesn't give you a pass. Right?
Yeah.
Just because you have a vaccine doesn't mean you can no longer regard masking, social distancing, and those other basic common sense precautions.
Yeah. With all these variants, I suspect this is going to be one of those diseases where we'll need booster shots every
Yes,
periodically.
I think that's very likely. Right. Which I would prefer a booster shot than a fatal infection.
Sure. Yeah. And I wish there's any way possible to get the word out to these people who are resistant to getting vaccinated for whatever reasons. Right? It's foolish.
Yeah.
It's foolish.
So, okay. So our next story is about a man in Tennessee who was arrested after apparently a months-long investigation into his ordering online and having delivered these childlike sex dolls.
Yeah.
Right? Now,
This has been in the news pretty steadily
Yeah.
for the past couple of years. I think in January of 2019, there was a lot of flap made about a seizure at the Canadian border of these dolls. And a lot of it stems from the Trump administration changes to, what was those twin bills, FOSTA and SESTA, something like that. Again, always in the name of protecting the children.
It's all
and
the children. It's
and
about the children.
keeping them from child trafficking. But there was a lot of redefining of terms. And I think most significantly, and probably the reason why this guy could be arrested at all, is that things that were previously not under the definition of child pornography would be, I mean, child pornography was something that involved an actual child,
right.
right? So if somebody was found with films that had kids in them, they would be charged, right, with trafficking child pornography. There was always this controversy around, like a lot of the anime,
Right.
the Japanese manga and hentai and all of these forms of highly eroticized, particularly young-looking Japanese and Korean animation,
Right.
which people were, like I said, up in arms about. Why isn't this child porn? And the answer was because it's a freaking cartoon.
Right.
There's no child here.
That's right.
Right. But now the way these laws are interpreted, even words on a page, right? Even a fictional story. If someone is writing about anything sexual having to like Lolita, that's now considered child porn.
That's right.
So of course the short-sightedness and the stupidity and the reactivity of not seeing that if someone is minor attracted, right? It's the same issue therapists talk about all the time. What if someone comes to your office and says, I feel this attraction and I need support in maintaining my resolve to not act out on this impulse? And the therapist thinks, oh my God, we have to call the thought police and,
Right.
and bust them because they talked about being attracted to kids. They didn't do anything.
They didn't do anything.
And they want help.
They want, right.
to not do
They don't want to
something.
do something.
Right. So when these dolls started to appear, we've talked about this on our sex talk show before, right?
Yeah.
That if someone has an adult-sized doll, people tend to usually kind of feel sorry for them and think of them as like some lonely loser that can't get a date and sitting at home screwing a doll. And in the old days, the dolls used to look like pool toys with a mouth, right? Like you really got to suspend your fantasy disbelief to stay engaged and screw a pool toy. But now, they're frighteningly realistic, real looking. But the point still remains, in terms of threat to society and protecting children, would you want some guy with these kind of impulses locked in his apartment at home, screwing a bag of nuts and bolts, or hanging around the playground with a bag of candy?
Well, but unfortunately, they don't frame it as a choice. For these people, it's that slippery slope, that ridiculous slippery slope
again,
argument.
The guy with the adult-sized doll, nobody thinks it's going to turn him into a rapist.
That's right.
Right? They're just
That's
going to
right.
feel, oh, look, you pathetic thing. But if it's a small doll, people think, oh, you're just stoking, you're fueling, you're indulging this sick, perverse fantasy, and it's only a matter of time before he's going to get bored with his doll, and then he will be out the door going to the playground.
Right. And we just don't see that. That's just not true.
No.
But it's the same argument. They'll say the same thing about porn in general.
Right.
That porn is no longer going to be enough. And they do equate that with rape. Right? Because once you're used to doing it, you have to get more and more and
You
more.
need a
And you're
fix.
never going to be satisfied. And it's going to escalate until you're out there raping children in Walmart.
Yeah.
Right? And that's not reality. Right? It really isn't.
Yeah.
So again, we see the, again, just going to call it stupidity. That's once again front and center. Right? And again, nobody is advocating that people should be having sex with child sex dolls. But again, you raised the most important question: which would you prefer they did?
Yeah.
Be out there struggling with these minor attracted feelings and impulses, or are they having a safe outlet that we don't have to worry about them being out there with children?
And this whole, they talk about this months-long investigation, right? The Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, like I'm sure there's nothing else important going on.
The TBI.
Right? Investigating this guy since October of 2020 after receiving information that he ordered the doll to be shipped to his home. Doesn't it sound a little bit like that booby trapping the cookie jar way of, right? Like he ordered something online. He made a purchase, he had it delivered, and then they waited until he signed for it and pounced and arrested him. Why don't they just illegalize the purchase? Right?
Okay, that would be easy. Right? Although, I'm having another thought about that. I'm now kind of considering moving to Tennessee because apparently it's a really, really safe place. They apparently don't have any crime.
Right?
There's nothing going on. If this is what they have the time and energy to do, obviously it's not a bad place to be.
I guess.
Right? I just won't bring any sex dolls.
That's right. Our last story tonight.
Yeah, this one I think has a lot of mixed feelings attached to it. As people may know,
Virginia.
a while back,
The South.
there was a teacher in a Virginia school. His name, if I have it here, I can't find his name. There it is, Tanner Cross. Right, now, yeah, not for nothing, but that already brings things up for me. But Tanner Cross was a phys ed teacher in the school in Loudoun County, Virginia, who at a school board meeting, I think a couple of months ago, had basically stood up and said he absolutely refuses to acknowledge, first of all, trans kids, period, but he refuses to use pronouns, preferred pronouns for trans kids, saying it is a violation of his Christian faith. Right? Now, as a result of that, he got fired. I'm sorry, he was suspended with pay. Right? And now a judge, right? 20th Circuit Court Judge James Plowman Jr. I don't know, maybe it's a Virginia thing, but that also brings things up for me. But James Plowman Jr. in the 20th Circuit Court basically reversed that, ordered that he get reinstated and return to work immediately, and he is now suing the school district. Right? Now, there's so many things to unpack in all of this.
Where do we start?
But let me just put this out, because this is something that I've said before to people. If you really consider yourself a person of faith, then there's nothing that anybody should ever be able to do or say that can shake that faith. Because if it does, if anything anybody can say or do threatens your faith, you don't have any. It's just rhetorical. Right? So this idea that if you acknowledge the existence of another kind of human being, that somehow is a violation of your faith, right? I mean, that to me is the very core of what's wrong with people's relationship to religion.
Yeah. And, hardly a Bible scholar, but I don't recall ever hearing any scripture anywhere referencing transgender people.
No.
I don't imagine that was
No.
addressed.
I can news you. It didn't
Back in
reference
those-
gay people either.
Right.
Right?
Well, there was.
They were just people.
There was some people tend to be selective about which parts of the Bible they want to hold up.
Oh, of course.
Depending on how it suits their needs.
Well, and they're very selective about how they interpret that as well, right? Because again, that Leviticus passage has nothing to do with homosexuality. It's all about reproduction and not understanding how it works. Right?
Yeah.
So it really wasn't even about that, because if you want to get technical, you'll find a lot of things where Christ had actually blessed the unions of same-sex couples, especially soldiers and their pages.
Wow.
So, again, let's be considerate. Again, not be so selective.
Yeah.
Right? Bible really should be an all or nothing kind of thing. You either accept it or you don't. You don't get to pick and choose.
So those are our news stories for tonight.
Yes, indeed. And as we like to do to end this particular show, we like to feature a piece we call Poetic Justice.
That's a good one tonight, and was caught on video, right?
Yes, indeed. This was an interesting case. This was in Washington State, right, on a lake that apparently...
This is Poetic Justice.
Right? Actually, just read the headline.
Yeah, a video shows a gay family rescuing an alleged homophobic couple who had harassed them when their boat burst into flames on a Washington lake.
Right? Now, it doesn't really do justice
Right.
to what this is about.
As the video shows, a family of 4 was enjoying a day on the lake, and were being targeted because on their boat they were flying gay pride flags.
Right. It was a male couple and their children.
Right. So another boat circled the family's boat, shouting homophobic, abusive slurs at them, and continued for quite a while, circling them and harassing them when the harasser's boat suddenly burst into flames.
Right. Yeah, they heard an explosion. They saw they burst into flames, and this particular couple, right, that was harassing this family, right, was then rescued by the same family that they were harassing. Right?
And they made a point of saying the family rescued the couple after their boat burst into flames, and they never even thanked them for it.
They just spent the last hour giving them the finger, cursing at them, yelling at them, saying horrible things to them, and then they had to be rescued by those people.
And it made it onto TikTok with over 10 million viral views already and 2.5 million likes.
Exactly.
That's not poetic justice.
No, and credit where credit is due. This family, because these horrible people that were involved didn't want their names to be used, didn't want to go public or anything like that, they're respecting that. So they did not reveal the name of those people. They knew it. They were perfectly fine rescuing them, doing the right thing, in spite of the fact that they never thanked them. They apparently were just really pissed. I can understand how pissed off they must have been to have been rescued by the people they were just harassing. Right? That's, if that's not poetic justice.
You got to wonder if it were reversed, if they would have rescued the gay family, if they were in... It's supposed to be, honor among boaters or some fraternity or something, but...
Well, obviously they don't ascribe to that.
Would have left them out there in the middle of the lake burning.
That's right. That's right. Probably throwing some more anti-gay epitaphs at them as they were burning.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
So, do they warrant our favorite salute?
I think they do. This unnamed couple who was harassing and then saved by... the gay pride flag flying family, we give you our traditional salute. And that will do it for another episode of Sex in the News. We are the Siegel Brothers. Thank you for watching. Stay well.